My name is Gregory Brown. I'm the Associate Director for Offshore for Maritime Strategies International. The offshore market has been in the midst of, depending on where you put it, a 4 or a 5 year downturn. That has been the most pronounced, the strongest, the worst downturn since the mid-1980s. The recovery, which is the good piece, that's where we are now. So we think we troughed last year, and we're now on the upwards trajectory. You can see that in terms of contract awards, which have inflected, utilization rates are ticking up, pricing comes next. The Middle East is probably the most robust market from a demand side that you'd see around, because you've got significant investment plans in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE, and you've got the return of LNG-related investment in Qatar. All of those projects have an offshore lean to them in terms of new platforms, new pipelines, new wells being drilled and completed. The demand in those countries is driven by national oil companies. So if you're working with the national oil company, the key thing that you have to do is to manage the local content. And a key trend across the Middle East is increased in-country or in-kingdom value. And if you're able to actually achieve that, and if you're able to actually deliver back to the local economy, that gives you a real competitive edge. What you're seeing from recent tenders coming through is that the oil companies themselves are requesting vessels which are less than 10 years old on contract sign and less than 15 years by the end of the contract. So that manages out some of those older assets. That particular trend is perhaps indicative of the fact that there's a lot of the younger vessels out there, and the oil companies feel like they've got the power to only require those sorts of vessels. So we're seeing increasingly on the tendering side requirements for hybrid vessels with some form of green nature to it. Not necessarily dual fuel, looking at the LNG fuel fleet, but very much looking at the hybrid vessels. Those tenders are coming through both from major integrated oil companies through to NOCs, and to a lesser extent some of the larger independents as well. Okay. But that's a shift which is very, very new for this cycle, and is certainly something which is very much incremental to the overall story. I think what could be a structural shift is that move towards hybrid power, because as soon as the economic realities of that are realised, and it is very, very much a case of the fuel costs are 20% lower with a hybrid type asset, once that becomes quite clear, the economic proposition is very, very obvious. And I think that actually moves it forward. And you've got the economic story, plus you've got the environmental story as well, because you are running with lower emissions. So Saudi itself, if you're working with Saudi Aramco, you are on the engineering, procurement, construction, and installation side, the larger contractors, you're in what's called the long-term agreement portfolio. It used to be only 2. It used to be just Saipem and McDermott. Then it was a few more. Now it's a lot. That's instructive to see that demand is obviously increasing. So Saudi Aramco wants to spread the work around. As that filters its way through to an offshore support vessel opportunity, it's interesting to see partnerships forming in terms of the Western contractors, McDermott, Saipem, etc., lining up with the domestic supply chain. So the relationship piece that we've just spoken about, it's obviously important to have a relationship with Saudi Aramco. It's also important to have a relationship with their supply chain as well, particularly as we look at new investment coming in, but also the brownfield type maintenance and operations work. That sort of activity, as the offshore basin matures, again, it's a considerable opportunity for the supply chain. And managing the level of demand with number of vessels available, plus the requirement to deliver in-kingdom value, all these sort of things go into the mix, and it does represent a material opportunity for the domestic Saudi supply chain.